I'm here with State Representative Glen Grell. Thank you for taking the time to sit down with us and talk a little bit about pension reform in Pennsylvania.
Yeah, my pleasure.
So the most recent numbers tell us the unfunded liability of the two state retirement systems is somewhere about $47 billion, maybe a little more, give or take. Can you talk to us a little bit about how we got to the point we're at today?
Yeah, and it's a moving target. The working number is somewhere between 45 billion and 50 billion with a B. That's between our two major state retirement systems. One state employees retirement system covers all state employees, and the other one is the public school employees retirement system, which covers the public school employees for all 500 of our school districts. Couple reasons that we've gotten here. One has to do with certain investment downturns. We had, in 2001, 2002, again 2008, 2009, we had major stock market losses. So when you have a fund that's that big and you incur losses, it has an effect on your annualized returns and then on your unfunded liability. The second reason has to do with some benefit enhancements that were granted back in 2001. Now, 2001, the retirement systems were fully funded, in excess of 100% funded, and a decision was made by previous governors, previous legislators. Fortunately, I wasn't around back then, but from what I've found out, there was a benefit enhancement that was given, and it was made retroactive. So current members of the system were given an increase in their multiplier by which the pension is calculated, retroactive to the time they started working. So in some cases that was 10, 15, 20, 30 years worth of back benefit that they were granted. And there's a cost to that. Third reason is for a period, especially the period between 2000 and 2010, there was underfunding of the pension plans on the part of the employer. Now keep in mind the employees in Pennsylvania do contribute to their own pension plan. Teachers, school employees pay 7.5% of their earnings into the pension plan on their own behalf. State employees pay 6.25%.
And that's
so
changed a little bit over.
Yeah, it's changed a little bit over the years, but consistently, that's withheld from their paycheck, so that goes in automatically. The employees have paid their fair share, their assessment, all along. But in order to balance budgets, in order to keep the pressure off of property taxes at the school district level, decisions were made, again, previous governors, previous administrations, previous legislatures, to underfund the employer contribution amount. And when you do that, you're not putting enough money into the plan to make it actuarially sound. So the combination of all those three things, plus some legislation that was enacted that sort of had the effect of masking the true unfunded liability, the combination of those four things really has led us to this point of the fund being underfunded.
Okay. It's a big number, 45 to 50 billion. I think 2 years ago we reported it was about 41, and then that's not including municipal pensions. That was another seven or so billion at that time. I mean, what was the response that you got from people in your district regarding numbers like that? They see a huge number and they say, what's being done about this? What's the legislature going to do about it? What's the governor going to do about it?
Well, fortunately, that unfunded liability is something that it's an amount that's due over the course of the next 30 years. What it means is if everybody came in and retired tomorrow, we wouldn't have enough money to pay their benefits. But that's of course not going to happen. There will be new employees coming in, paying into the system as current employees retire. So it's not something that, certainly not 3 or 4 years ago, that was critical that all 40 or 50 billion dollars be taken care of all at once. And we knew it was a problem a few years ago. In fact, in 2010, we did pass fairly substantial pension reform legislation known as Act 120 that scaled back the benefit to future employees. It didn't touch current employees, and we can get into why you can't or why it's very difficult to touch anything to do with current employees. But we did enact a new plan for future employees that was effective December 1st of 2010. And as a result, there are probably, I think it's over 30,000 employees, state and school district, who are now in that Act 120 plan, which is considerably less expensive than the legacy plan. We did some things like we increased the vesting period from 5 years to 10 years before you're fully vested. We included in Act 120 that when you retire, the option to take your contributions out in a lump sum the day you retire, that was taken away for the Act 120 folks. But again, it didn't change anything with respect to current employees. And the reason that was passed that way, at the time, that was what the legislature could do. You know, there were some that wanted to do more, there were some that wanted to do considerably less or nothing, or further masking of the problem. But as a result of some really good bipartisan work that I was involved with it, former Chairman Dwight Evans from Philadelphia, Appropriations Chairman, the two of us were sort of drivers of that legislation. And it's a really good thing that we did that. Otherwise, the employer contributions would have gone from 4% to 8% to now where we would be well over 20% in the mid-20s if we hadn't taken that action with Act 120. But still more needs to be done.
Yeah, I mean, obviously everybody's said that over the last, at least the last 2 calendar years. We've heard a lot about, we did a lot in 2010. There's still a lot we need to do. It is a priority. It's high on the priority list, but other things have kind of been a little higher, and you guys now tackled, transportation was obviously #1 for a lot of folks. What about this year? I mean, what are you expecting as we go into, further into this year? You start talking about, a budget and ironing all that out. What happens with pensions? What happens with, some of the other items on that list? Is that the #1 for you?
Well, it's been the #1 for me because even the transportation issue, as large as it was, we were trying to find a way to come up with $2 to $3 billion a year to meet transportation needs. Here we're talking about $40 or $50 billion. So in terms of the effect that not doing anything will have on school districts and on the general fund budget, I mean, there is no issue in Pennsylvania that will have larger financial ramifications than failing to do something on pension reform. Every school district in this state is looking to see an increase, about a doubling of their share of the employer contribution over the course of the next 4 years if we don't do anything. We're sitting in the Cumberland Valley School District, and if we don't do anything, the employer contribution from Cumberland Valley School District will go from $4 million this year to $8 million a year just 4 years from now if we don't do anything. And that's something that even a strong school district would have grave difficulty in satisfying. And if they do, their only source of revenue, or their primary source of revenue, is the property tax. So all of those pension increases will be reflected in property tax. So in my view, there's no more important issue out there on anybody's plate than pension reform. But it's not an easy issue.
No, it's very
and it's not a popular issue either.
It's very complicated. It's very political in terms of who's willing to do what to make it happen. Your party's, the Republican Party's obviously pushed hard, the last few years trying to get this, higher up the food chain. Let's make some things happen, this cycle or next. I'm wondering, do you have, if something does come to light in the next few months, so a bill gets pushed through the House or the Senate, I mean, are there enough Republican votes to push it through on its own? Do you have some Democrats willing to listen to, what's already been put out there? Well,
it depends what the proposal is, obviously. I always try to give Governor Corbett a lot of credit because he didn't have anything to do with causing this problem. I mean, the decisions that I went over earlier were made way before he became governor. And I also give him credit in each of his budgets. The final budget has fully funded the required pension obligation for the fund. So we at least stopped that process of underfunding the plan. Yeah. So having said that, and frankly, last year, about this time, in his budget address, the governor did make a specific pension reform proposal. There were some very unpopular parts of it. One part had to do with imposing some mandatory changes on current members. And that was not received well anywhere, including the legislature and among the unions. And as a result, that piece of it was carved out in the Senate through the committee process. So all that was left standing in the Senate was a plan that would put all future employees into yet another new plan design. The plan design they proposed was putting all future members into a defined contribution plan, which is different from the defined benefit plan that they currently have. It's comparable to a 401k type private retirement plan that the public sector or the private sector has gone
403B, right?
Right,
That's what they call it in
the
public sector.
Yeah, and I mean the benefit of that is that it spreads the investment risk. Currently, under a defined benefit plan, the employer, i.e. the taxpayer, bears all the risk if investment returns go down, as they did in those 2008, 2009 periods. In a defined contribution plan, it shifts all of that investment risk to the employee. So the employer puts money in, the employee puts money in, it's invested, and whatever the return is, that's what the employee gets when they retire. So it's a total paradigm shift on the investment risk side. And that plan design is not popular among the unions and employees who would be affected by that new plan design. So that proposal of the governor's last year met with a lot of resistance on a couple counts. Now he's at it again. He's going to try again because he understands the urgency of doing something.